right, so who here has already used the VI package manager to install some packages into LabVIEW? Okay, cool.
Do you mean today or or ever?
In the future, Alan. So good. So you all kind of know some of the concepts already. How many of you guys have opened up the the NI package manager to install stuff? Okay, great. So what I'm going to be talking about today is about some of the new features coming out in 26 Q3 with VIPM and also LabVIEW. One of the things that we've been working hard on is a command line interface and improving the how one manages packages within their project. How many people in the audience have used a package manager in Python, Rust? Okay, great. And so how many are familiar with like, in Python you have like a pyproject.toml, or you use like a requirements.txt maybe? Okay, so these other programming languages typically have a file, a manifest, which declares the different packages that are used within that project. It declares all the versions of the packages, and it's a plain text file, which makes it nice because you can manage it in source code control. And then the package manager, you can just tell it to install all the packages, and it takes care of all the business. So we've been working to kind of get inspiration from, align with package managers out there in the software engineering world. Put on my glasses. So I want to show you guys something sooner than later. But so what I do want to start out with is some of the kind of the business context for why we've been working on this. And I'll kind of lead with the fact that in 2026 Q3 in LabVIEW, there's going to be a new checkbox in the build specification, advanced property pane, which is to build an SBOM, a software bill of materials that will be built along with your executable. It'll be kind of like a sibling artifact. You don't ship this to customers necessarily, but it gives you a record of all of the different things that are inside of that executable, the PPL that you're distributing to your end customers. So the reason why this is important is that very soon, 2026, September, Q3, there's a deadline in the European Union, which is part of this Cyber Resilience Act, which says that if you're distributing a software product in the EU, you need to have and maintain within your organization a software bill of materials of what went into that software product that you're distributing within the EU. There's a lot of other aspects to these regulations, process requirements. For example, if a vulnerability is found in one of your components or your software product itself, there are deadlines for addressing it and reporting that to specific CRA authorities within the EU. This is evolving very, very quickly. Some regions don't even have places to report it to, but it's very quickly being adopted, being assembled, and the entire industry is also kind of catching up, participating. So in LabVIEW 2026 Q3, there's a checkbox in the advanced settings. and it'll create that artifact in a location that you would like, and it uses a standard file format. So that's going to be free as part of the LabVIEW development environment. And it's also part of a component of JKI's security suite. So in the keynote today, Sarah Zaleski, one of our partner principal engineers at JKI, she presented a little bit on our security suite. It does static analysis. VIPM analyzes your code and finds package dependencies. The security suite analyzes your code and looks for specific blocks of code, instances of code, which may be risky. Like if you have a hard-coded security token or password, it can detect things like that. So I'm not going to go into that in great detail, but one of the themes that's going to be evolving, continuing to evolve very quickly, is security. So the package management is really a core component in this whole process of keeping applications secure. So using components in your application is necessary. I probably don't even have to say that, right? Everybody knows. You find useful libraries. Maybe it's things that ship in vi.lib as part of LabVIEW. Maybe you build your own components, but knowing what's inside is critical. And it's critical because you're not necessarily keeping all the components in your source code. Under revision control, you're referencing them and pulling them in. That's what a package manager does. But knowing what's inside is critical. You need to be able to reproduce your build. And good tooling is what makes this possible. Identifying which things you need, allowing you to specify which things you want, keeping track of it, making sure you can get them in the future. Okay. So some disclaimers, a lot of these are going to be preview features. Some of them are already publicly released. You can go to docs.vipm.io and you can find a lot of documentation about the command line interface and the things that I'm going to be showing you. Coming in 2026 Q3 as part of LabVIEW, and some of them are pro features, and I'll call that out too. You guys probably know about VIPM.io. You can search for packages, you can share packages, et cetera. But let's jump in. There's a VIPM command line that ships as part of VIPM desktop. So you can just open a terminal and type VIPM, and I'll do that so you can see here. And so I just typed VIPM. Maybe I can even open this in a regular full screen terminal here. So I type VIPM and I can see all of the different commands that are available to me. You can initialize a folder that has your LabVIEW project in it, and it'll create that manifest file for tracking your packages. You can add packages, you can search for packages. And I'll just show you some of these here. Actually, I'm going to...
Jim, is this part already in?
Yes, this part is in.
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm in a folder called NI Connect, and I'm going to initialize a project. So I'm going to type VIPM init. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a text editor with this file that already exists. And you can see that it's a TOML file, TOML, which it's kind of like an INI config file. It has some additional features that allows kind of nesting and arrays and things like that. But you can kind of conceptually think of it as an INI file. So I'll go ahead and close that. Oops. And I'll then search for a package. So I'm going to do VIPM search. What's your favorite package, Alan?
Network endpoints.
network endpoints. I didn't practice this, so this may or may not work. Which of these is the one that I want here? Is it this one?
Network endpoint actors, yep.
Okay, so I just found that with a search. And so I'm going to do VIPM add. And then I'm going to open that back up in the little text editor. And we can see that it added the latest version of that. For whatever reason, my VIPM install isn't popping open because it's saying it's missing some shared library. So I think my runtime engine installation got a little messed up. I can switch over to Windows and show you guys things actually working. But the next logical step would be to install. And right now, these packages all install into a LabVIEW version. Your project, your TOML file here, will specify which LabVIEW version you're using for your project. And this could be like your save version. We also support opening and editing kind of your code in a different LabVIEW version. So if you want to do an install, you can choose a LabVIEW version. 2026, for example. This probably isn't going to work because for whatever reason it wasn't launching VIPM, but it's launching LabVIEW, trying to install a package. Let's see if it actually works.
So does that just go down the TOML list and do everything?
Yeah, exactly. And it passes them into VIPM. Pretty soon we're going to add the dependency resolver into the command line tool, but not quite yet. We're letting the desktop application do it like it used to. Let's see if this works. Ooh, it's still trying here. Oh, it looks like maybe it did something. Oh, it was installing the package, okay. I left too soon here. So Alan, how do I find this package? Is it in add-ons?
Yep.
Okay.
Natural instruments.
Okay, great. That exceeded my expectations. Awesome. Let's see if I can. Okay, so I'm going to save this into my projects, NI connect. Oh, no, I didn't put it there. I just put it in my root directory there. Perfect. And so I'm just going to call this like my main VI. I'm also going to create a project. We'll add our VI to the project. Did LabVIEW just crash? No, it just hid the project. I'll save this as my project. All right. So as I mentioned, in the future, when you create an application, in the advanced pane, there's going to be a new generate SBOM option. And what it's going to do is it's going to look at all the source files that are going into that executable, and it's going to look at the whole VI hierarchy of your top-level VIs and your always include VIs. And from that, it's going to look up which packages installed those VIs, and then it's going to create your software bill of materials from those components. And let's say I'm hoping this will work. I didn't try this part right before the presentation. So we've now removed that package from our dependencies list. And what I'm hoping, let's see, there's a command called VIPM sync. And I think if I point it to this myproject.lvproj, what I'm hoping happens is, there you go. It read all the links for all the files in the project, and it added that dependency into the TOML file. So it generated that automatically. And so we'll see here, if we pop that back open, it added that. And it's also smart in that it can identify NI packages too. We don't have NI package manager on Linux. We're working on support for identifying the RPM and the Debian packages for components that get installed using traditional Linux package managers. I think NI may be working on NI package manager for Linux, but I'm not sure if and when that'll happen. What else did I want to show you? Let me jump back to the presentation. I think I've done a good job not just showing you slides, but showing you some LabVIEW code. Okay, yeah,
You
actually.
didn't show any LabVIEW code, you showed me a big wall of text. It's like one.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That's true. Oh, you saw a project in it.
Yeah, I saw a project in a
Who
video.
wants to see more LabVIEW code? No. Okay, all right. I'll show you some more visual stuff here soon. So the other thing that we can do is we can do VIPM lock. Okay, good, that worked. And then, so the lock, VIPM.lock file is a sibling to the TOML file. And this is similar to what other package managers do. They have like uv.lock, or they have, I think it's cargo.lock. And the lock file is slightly different than the VIPM TOML file, the manifest of specifications. So if you're building a library that other people are going to either develop or directly link to, you might declare the dependencies of your sources. And it might be an older LabVIEW version. It might be a package greater than or equal to something. But when we do a build, we want a reproducible build. We don't just want, Ellen's favorite actor framework network endpoint greater than or equal to 4.0. If we're doing a build in our executable, we want exactly 4.0.0.22. I thought we were also doing the hashes in here. Maybe this is an older, different version, but it basically specifies exactly where this came from. And so it says it came from the repo, and this is TOML format, so it's hard to totally tell, but this package.source, so this package.source section here applies to this package. And so the repository is where it came from, which is the NI LabVIEW tools network. And we can see up here that that's defined in the file, and we know the URL of that repository. Plus we know the SHA-256 checksum of that package. And so before we do a build, or we can actually do like VIPM lock check, and it'll verify that everything that's installed matches this lock file. It's not going so far as to verify each individual file VI that they haven't been modified. That's something that we're definitely looking into. It's a little bit more complicated in where you store stuff. But the idea is that if somebody has this VIPM.lock file, they should ideally be able to obtain all the exact packages because we know the sources. They should be able to verify that all the hashes match, so they know they're using the exact same package that was used for a build.
Does it work for NI packages too?
Yeah, it does on Windows, yeah. And let's see, what else did I want to show you here? Let me jump back to the presentation. Before I jump into some of the advanced uses of it, I'm going to try something that might be a little bit crazy for whatever reason, there's a race condition in the build, and sometimes or maybe the startup, it sometimes gives me a 500 error. It usually works on the third time for some weird reason. Maybe I'll get lucky and it'll work on the second time. Okay, good. So this is a prototype of a new way of using VIPM desktop. So VIPM desktop typically is this huge package list of everything that's available. You choose which LabVIEW version you're sort of thinking about looking at, and it shows you what's installed and not installed, which, makes sense when there's not a ton of packages, when you probably want all of them. But in terms of managing your project, it is not project-centric. So what we wanted to do is to kind of shift that frame of reference. Actually, maybe I can go all the way up here to the project we just created, which is NI Connect. Okay. All right, wish me luck. This may or may not. Okay, it worked, good. So what this interface shows me is essentially that VIPM TOML file. I can also choose, so the project is kind of specifying a save version of 2026. That's what we would ideally like to build the application in. We can also choose our working version of LabVIEW. Maybe I don't have that fully specified version that my other colleague has. This is a little bit nonsensical because I probably couldn't work on a project in 2020 if it's saved in 2026. But you can open LabVIEW right from here. You can also, remember we did the sync from project. Let's see if this actually works here. If I remove this, we did that sync command. I think that should work from here. There we go. And it says that it found that package. And so apply means add it to the project. So now it's in the project. Okay, and you can see it shows you some descriptive information. And so now let's say I want to add an MD5 utility. And so here you can find packages directly from this interface and then directly add them to that TOML file. And then from here, we can see, oh, it's already in sync. So that package was already installed because I did this demo earlier, but you can uninstall, remove it from the manifest, etc. Any questions about that part?
Not about that part, but I just have a question. It seems like there's overlap in the functionality with another JKI product, Dragon.
Yes.
I was just curious, is this intended to kind of succeed Dragon, or what's the future of Dragon?
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to supersede the VIPC and the Dragon files. They're still supported, so you can do VIPM from the command line, VIPM install, and then point it to your VIPC file or your .dragon. We're thinking about working on ways to kind of like import or like if you have a VIPC to transform that into a VIPM TOML file. And the .dragon files are kind of the same format. We've just decided to kind of go a different direction with the naming.
So does this mean that you're kind of rolling Dragon into, I haven't looked that closely at Dragon. I mean, are we rolling, is this the direction you're going and not so much Dragon anymore? Or are they still?
Well, so the in LabVIEW experience I still think is kind of valid. Working in the LabVIEW project, frankly, has been extremely difficult with the project provider. And so,
Because here there be Dragons, yes.
yeah, and then the distribution is a little bit tricky too. So a lot of kind of the new development has been looking at, kind of other ways to do it. So I'm going to show you guys another thing that I've been working on. And this isn't part of Q3 2026. This is just kind of prototyping. So the same code base that we use for that little desktop application, we've also built a prototype of a VS Code extension. How many of you guys have used VS Code? Okay, good. So I use VS Code for my LabVIEW projects because it provides me a nice file system-based view of things. And so I can click on my TOML file, VIPM TOML, and I can see, this nice user interface. I can, the Open in LabVIEW button isn't there right now. It should be. So I can, directly choose like, okay, I want to start working on this in this version of LabVIEW. It'll pop open LabVIEW. I can find new packages and manage it visually. It's also possible to open it with the default editor. And then now I'm just editing the TOML file. And then let's see if I can do something crazy, change that to 0.1, and then just open it here. And we can see the declared version is 0.1, but the installed version is 0.9. And when you edit it here, it hopefully updates live over here. Any questions about that? Okay, so let's jump back over here. So one of the really valuable use cases is being able to use the package manager in LabVIEW within containers. How many of you guys have played with Docker container technology yet? A little bit? Okay, so the nice thing about containers is they kind of give you effectively like a little virtual machine. However, typically you would not interact with any of the Windows high-level windowing desktop system. It would all be command line based. And so if, containers integrate, seamlessly with the CI/CD pipelines like GitHub or GitLab, or I think you could probably do it in Jenkins with a bit of manual work. I haven't used Jenkins in probably a decade, but what you can do in your project workflows, which are basically your pipeline, when you push code to the repository, GitHub or GitLab, you can trigger an action to run, which is essentially a sequence of commands, and they're kind of grouped by different jobs, and they have all sorts of little things you can do that are built into it. Like you can upload files as your artifact after a build. But the idea would be is you could execute a build of a LabVIEW artifact like a PPL or an EXE, and you could do this all from the command line in the cloud basically, or on a computer that you're running locally that's just talking to the whole kind of pipeline orchestration system. So containers are an important part of that process. NI LabVIEW have shipped and maintained Docker containers with LabVIEW. The most recent one is 2025 Q3, I think. And so that's a real big development. They have it for Windows and for Linux. We have on VIPM.io an example of how to set that up. It's not yet for the faint of heart. Let's see. There we go. So in the VIPM.io GitHub repo, we have some examples here of how to use Docker containers in a workflow. I think we may have some examples of these running. And so if we click on the job, we can essentially see all the different steps that it did. It downloaded a copy of the repository. It pulled the LabVIEW Windows container image. You can see it's getting all the data. And then what it does is inside of that container, it executes some commands. So we here executed a VIPM command to just run that help. We verify the version, and then what we could do is we could do a build of our package. I'm going to start zooming here because we're close to the top of the hour and we lost 15 minutes. Let's see here. We talked about VIPM init. Talked about that. VIPM list will tell you everything that's in your TOML file. talked about the lock, talked a little bit about the SBOM generator. So that kind of wraps it up, except I didn't mention that we support build specifications. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you on the docs.vipm.io site. And this hints at it. So you can add sections in here, which are your build specifications. And so this is build.mylibrary. So my library is just the name of the build spec. We support PPL, executable. And for the PPL, you just choose your LVlib. For executables, you need to choose your LabVIEW project, the path to your project, and the build spec inside of your LabVIEW project. I don't know if we have examples of those here, but oh, you know what? We maybe have it on the preview. This is the new stuff I've been working on. LV proj, build. So these are all the different types of build specs that we support: executables, PPLs, VI packages. And here he goes, in exe, you specify your startup VI, your output directory. I don't see the one that points to a LabVIEW project, though. Let's see. Well, take my word for it right now. You can basically tell it, here's a build by name. You point to your LabVIEW project, and then the LabVIEW project's build spec. And then from the command line, you can do VIPM build, and then the build spec name in your VIPM TOML file, and then it'll execute that build. So the whole idea is, we want this command line tool to help you find packages, add them to your project, install them, lock them down. If you've locked them down with that lock file, any command that does a build or install will verify and output an error if what you have installed doesn't match the lock, and then you can do your builds. And then we're also adding support inside of the build specifications. You can specify that you want an SBOM generated at the same time as the build. So I think I'm gonna wrap up there. If you want more information, you can go to docs.vipm.io. The /preview will show you all the latest and greatest stuff. That's revving almost every day while we clean things up and tighten up the features. There's some pictures being taken. If you do go to the docs site, by default, it lands on the latest, which is the 2026 Q1. But if you toggle up at the top to the preview docs, these are the documentation for the upcoming 2026 Q3, so you can see what's coming there. Also, you can go to jki.net/security to find out more about the static analysis, compliance tooling. And then this presentation will probably end up on our blog. Go to LinkedIn, follow JKI on LinkedIn. You'll probably see lots of marketing stuff with follow-ups on this. Any final questions before we go? It's probably about time to wrap. We're a few minutes over. Yeah.
In the log file, in the TOML file, it looks like you had LabVIEW version 2026. Can you specify Q1, Q3, certain hotfixes that need to be?
So the way that would be achieved, and we didn't show development dependencies, but when you add a dependency, you can add a command line argument, --dev, and then it adds it into a different section for development dependencies. And so you could add the specific NI package for like LabVIEW core, which is the NI package, and lock it down to that specific package if you wanted to. But to directly answer your question, no, not in that top part. There's no ability to specify a quarter. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for your time and attention and good questions.
Still got 10 minutes if you want to.
Okay. Well, so you guys can feel free to walk out, or you can just ask questions popcorn style.
Just curious, why do you use Linux?
Well, I also use Windows.
Yeah, but why?
I also have a Mac at home too. So, joking aside, so VIPM needs to work on every platform. So it helps me to use every platform, both to do builds and to understand it and know how LabVIEW works on those. I haven't used Windows as my daily machine in probably about 15 years, but I use Windows all the time inside of virtual machines. So I'm kind of using it, but I don't keep my files on Windows. Nowadays, most of my files are in the cloud and most things are just checkouts of repositories. For the text-based programming, so the command line VIPM is all written in Rust. The Rust compilation process is probably twice as fast on Linux because the file systems are faster. All the tool chains are just so much easier to set up and install. It just works kind of seamlessly. And so kind of once you go that direction and become a little bit kind of proficient with it, I haven't had any problems. The Ubuntu desktop for, pop open Firefox and stuff like that has worked fine for me. Now with Claude Code, I can pop open Claude Code in my terminal. Have you guys used Claude Code at all? Yeah, so it's basically terminal, text-based terminal based. Here, let me open a new one. So if you type Claude, then you get a text-based interface. And typically you would use this as a terminal inside of VS Code. And now you can type in here and Claude can see all your code. You can say like, what's this project about? And it can read all your files, it can write all your files. If you have command line tools like the GitHub command line, it can check issues. Like you can say like, what's the most recent 2 issues in GitHub? And it'll use the GitHub command line interface to get that information. It can file issues. I can say like, file an issue on this. Or I can say, I want to work on this issue, create a branch and a pull request, and let's start working on it. We're getting off on a fun tangent. You can create skills, which can be invoked, and the skills are basically markdown files that tell it what sequence of things to do. I'll do you in a sec. But getting back to the Linux thing, I can open Claude just in my root folder and say, hey Claude, I'm having problems with my NVIDIA driver for my laptop. And it'll go, oh, it's because, you accidentally, did your apt prune or whatever, and it deleted the source drivers because they weren't tagged as this. Do you want to do that? And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And then, okay, reboot, and then run this command and paste it in here. Tell me how it works. And so it ends up being just this incredible resource for maintaining my system. It also runs on Windows from the command line too. Question?
So you have very briefly the, traditional package manager interface that you were talking about earlier, where it shows you all the packages that are out there.
Yeah.
How do you go from there to the VIPM desktop that you were talking about?
Oh, like the new one? So that's a prototype right now, so that's still being fleshed out.
Are we gonna see that come your Q3 release?
Well, it's not in 2026 Q3. Maybe it'll show up in 2027 preview. Once we get past the Q3 official release, we'll sort of switch immediately over to working on 2027 Q1 preview, and we'll push new versions of the preview release, kind of like Google Chrome. Oh, you got a new version, restart to continue. I would imagine that kind of new interface, it would be marked as experimental, and we would just give people an easy way to pop open, like it might be VIPM GUI from the command line, and that would be an experimental GUI that would pop open right there. Yeah?
What's the difference between VIPM build and something like LabVIEW CLI for build system?
What's the difference between the VIPM build command and the LabVIEW CLI build?
Right, I want to build a project.
Well, so you can do pretty similar things. The VIPM build also supports passing in a path to a LabVIEW project as a parameter. I think it's like --LV proj, and then the path to your project, and then probably -- build spec, and then this build spec name. So you can do that just like you can in the LabVIEW CLI. I haven't used the LabVIEW CLI in a long time because for a long time it was really flaky and hard to use. And then also too, the VIPM build supports the build specs directly in our VIPM TOML file, which, goes alongside the packages. And so it's kind of a nice single place for managing all of those together.
Isn't it going to change your packages to the matching ones, or is it not going to change them?
It will. If you try to do a build and they're not installed, it'll show you an error that your packages to do the build aren't installed. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Well, isn't that the difference between the LabVIEW CLI?
Yeah.
It's not going to deal with
Yeah.
the specific packages, whereas yours is going to live things up before it builds.
Exactly, yeah. That would be kind of the core difference, is it kind of treats it holistically. Yeah. The other thing that we've been working on too is the ability for a build spec to declare that it depends on another build spec. And so invoking a build of your executable could, if the executable build spec says that it depends on the PPL, you can kind of cascade them. And we've also been kind of prototyping workspaces, which allows you to...
You might want to use Solution Explorer if you're trying to do the cascading build thing.
Sure,
Since
yeah.
that's what that's for.
Yeah, exactly. Well, with workspaces, then you can kind of have projects that have individual libraries that are kind of independently managed with their own VIPM TOML file. Sometimes that's helpful. Yeah?
How can this all work with, say, like a third-party package or something that's not an official NI package?
So would those packages provide VIs or DLLs or?
It's like a executable, or it's a packaged file.
Yeah, so right now we support NI packages and we support VIPM packages. With that sync tool, we can find which NI packages installed the VIs that your project is using. You can also explicitly add NI packages that you know are required. Other installers, it gets into kind of like, the Wild West, so to speak, of like, well, where did that installer come from? So we don't really address that. We are exploring supporting RPM and the Debian package manager to be able to specify dependencies in those. Maybe in the future, we'd also support something like WinGet, which is the official Windows Microsoft Package Manager. But we'll see. Yeah.
Can an organization have like private packages that just publishes internally only?
Yeah, exactly. So VIPM supports adding your own package repository where you can, I thought it was activated, but so basically it'll just ask you for the URL of your package repository. And then when you refresh your package list, that will show up in the list. I think JKI, we have our own private repository. I think if I refresh, some of these unpublished will start to show up as JKI. So that's a professional VIPM Pro feature. And then we offer kind of team-based pricing. You can put your repository on the network. We also support, for some customers, private instances of the VIPM.io website, which then allows you to actually kind of host the packages like in Amazon S3 buckets and stuff. Yeah, if you're interested in that, feel free to ping me. Okay, we're about a quarter after, so it might be the unofficial ending point here. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of the conference. Appreciate your time and attention.